Hello and welcome to the first supporting video for Unit 1 Exploring Businesses on Assignment 1.1, the features of two contrasting businesses. So this assignment should have been handed out to you around the 13th of September, and the first submission is the 25th of September. So it is very important that you meet your first deadlines, as this entitles you to one resubmission with some feedback. However, any missed deadlines will then incur a penalty and you will have no resubmission. Okay, so you will not be able to gather any feedback from your teacher if you do not hit that deadline. So it's vitally important that you submit your work on or before the 25th of September. So part A of our Unit 1.1 assignment looks into the learning game, explore the features of different businesses and analyse what makes them successful. And then learning game B is then investigating how these businesses are organised. Okay, so section 1, 2 and 3 will be done across your research document, a web page document and a magazine article. But to start off with, on our research document, we are looking on Learning Aim A and your P1, which is explaining the features of two contrasting businesses. So to make this a little bit easier for you, we've laid this out as your kind of introduction and for you to choose your business. So 50 words within your lesson, you would have defined what a business is using footnotes as references, 50 words explaining what is meant by the term features of a business, and then 50 words introducing your first and second business, making sure that any research that you have done is correctly referenced within the footnotes of your page, which you should now know what to do. So at the start of lesson 1, we gave you a list of these two sets of businesses. So they are all may work in similar areas or similar markets, but they are all very contrasting. So for instance, John Lewis Partnership is a very different organisation to the likes of Just Eat. Okay, so your first action was to choose two of those businesses, and you would have written 50 words introducing them. So basically who they are, what they do, and maybe a brief historical background as to where they started and how they may have expanded into 2021. So by the end of your first lesson, you should know obviously what a business is, being able to then define what the key terms or features of a business are, and then introducing business number 1 and business number 2. So the second part of the initial kind of introduction and what you would have done into lesson 2 is when we start looking at the basic concept of ownership. Okay, so for this section you would have done 50 words showing understanding of the 3 different types of ownership, 50 words explaining the difference between limited and unlimited liability, 50 words explaining the different types of protection of liability, 50 words explaining the process of incorporation, and 50 words explaining flotation. So to start it off then, you have been introduced to the 3 concepts of the different types of ownerships. So first of all, you've got private ownership, second of all you've got public ownership, and then thirdly you've got not-for-profit. So privately run organisations are essentially those that are owned, managed and financed by an individual or groups of people. This all pertains to the concept of liability. So as a reminder, a liability is something that you owe, and it's an obligation by law for you to pay another party, whether that is your suppliers or maybe some contractors that you've got in as part of payments, or if you are unfortunate to be part of a lawsuit, that would be something that you would have to be involved with. Now, looking at the concept of unlimited liability, those come under whether you are a sole trader and you may be working for yourself, or a partner. So unlimited liability is when you as the individual or the partner are liable for all of the finances that are linked to the business. So for instance, if you have £500,000 worth of liabilities that you have to pay, but your company only has £350,000 worth of assets, then the remainder that you are missing will fall on you as a sole trader, or you and your partner if you're in a partnership, because you have that unlimited liability. So, as maybe a sole trader or partner, you can decide to go through the route of becoming a limited liability company, which would reduce the risk of you being financially responsible for any debts that are incurred by the business. We'll come to how this actually happens in just a moment, but limited liability businesses can be split up into four major categories. They could be a LTD or a private limited company, you could be a limited liability partnership, a cooperative or co-op organisation, or you can be decided to be publicly funded and float on the stock exchange to become a public limited company. It's important that you do not mistake or mix up public limited companies for public organisations that are run by the government, such as police and fire service. So a public limited company are those companies that float on the stock exchange and allows individuals to purchase shares. So for every individual or partnership or business to become a private organisation, they have to go through the process of incorporation. What incorporation does, this creates a separate legal identity to the individuals, and that then becomes responsible for the finances that are incorporated and taken in by the business. All limited liability companies are incorporated and registered with Companies House, and you are able to visit Companies House's website to find information pertaining to all businesses that are incorporated within the United Kingdom. On that website, they will have memorandums and articles of association. It will show that they've been registered with Companies House. It will give the company a unique company number, and you'll also be able to find insights into the directors that have been appointed by that business, and you can find that information for all the businesses that you are researching. All limited liability companies are incorporated and registered with companies. However, the way with which you finance that could be ever so slightly different. If you are a private company and you only want certain individuals to be able to finance and run and have shares in the company, you will become a limited company. However, with the concept of flotation, you can look at upscaling or increasing your business's size through external finances. This is where businesses will float on somewhere such as the London Stock Exchange and become a public limited company. This is where anybody can buy shares within the business to have a small percentage ownership of that organisation. You can see, using the FTSE 100, the top 100 businesses that are currently floating on the London Stock Exchange. This is useful information for you to find out as part of your research, so have a look at the FTSE index to see if your business features in the top 100 listed organisations on the London Stock Exchange. So just as a quick recap, we'll just go through some of the key terms that we've covered. So the first type of ownership that we've looked into is private ownership. These are businesses and organisations that are run and owned by individuals or groups of peoples. These usually have the overall goal of being profitable, expansion and growth with the product or service that they offer. We looked at the concept of liability, and liability is essentially the legal obligation that the business or individual may have to fulfill to ensure that all debts incurred are covered. That is then split up into two sections, whether that's limited liability or unlimited liability. Limited liability is you are protected and you are only limited to the valuations with which you have inputted into the business. If the business goes under, you will only lose the finances that you've invested in the organisation. However, if you are registered as a sole trader or a partnership, there is no separate or legal identity between you as an individual and you as the business person, and therefore you have unlimited liability and would therefore be liable for any of the finances or any debts or any charges that are incurred by the business, especially if those costs that are incurred are greater than the assets that you have. Finally, the concept of incorporation, where you register with Companies House and create a private company that then becomes a separate legal identity to you as an individual, which then reduces the liability that you have. So you become limited in the liability that you have. So that's what we've looked at so far. Next time we'll be looking at the concept of public ownership.